talk, assume you know how many economic-based jobs you need to create, and you're short or you're looking at this solo work theater. And where do you go from there? And so one of the things we've been looking at there, it's one thing to say we see a phenomena in the market, or we observe people working alone and actually exporting what they do, and that's economic based. It's one thing to recognize that you have these kinds of jobs being created in the economy, and it's something completely different to actually put a program together that actually causes it to happen, or causes jobs to get created that wouldn't otherwise get created. And in order to make a legitimate job creation program theater out of this solo work category or theater, you have to do certain things, we think. And there's a number of programs underway that are being tested and rolling out, and what we're discovering is they're still not complete. So we still have work to do on this business model. And it's what it is. It's a brand new business model for job creation. The advantage is that this new theater takes advantage of a cycle that's occurred. So, before the Industrial Revolution, everything was produced at home. We didn't have factories, we didn't have offices. We had government offices, the king had government offices, but almost everything that was produced at home. And the Industrial Revolution allowed us to move to factories, and then later the Information Age allowed us to do and export work from offices. And now what's happening is we're starting to see jobs produced at home again. And it's probably the fastest growing modality or location for jobs, which means that your residential real estate is now potentially the platform for economic-based growth. And so it means you're not really tied to the old models of recruiting industries that need factory space or office space. There's a third option. But again, convert it to an actual legitimate program. We've got to have some real order to it. So who are the people that make up this cohort of solo workers? It's 1099 contractors. It's W-2s working for corporations. It's an LLC, somebody building a product, fixing watches. You can have a radiologist reading radiology film for the Cleveland Clinic from a rural community. You've got all sorts of jobs now are being produced. Work's being produced from remote platforms or mobile platforms or home-based platforms. So we started working on this thing about probably 2007, and we realized that that you may be able to use your residential real estate as the platform if you could figure out how to go through Roberto's care model. Can you create? Can you attract? Can you retain? And can you expand solo workers, people working alone? So the state of the art of the model that's been developed so far is a consortia of players that we've assembled and have under test right now. So what I'm going to talk about in this session and get some interactions. We have some of the consortia players here, and kind of lay out how this works. We'll have some actual test results from the first from this current test probably by the end of February. So essentially, the model is one where you have a location. You're going to create an ecosystem for these solo workers. And these solo workers can be of two types, really. There are people who are working on a 1099 or a W-2 for someone. So they have a normal job. They just don't go report to a bricks and mortar location for it. And then the other is a job that you perform yourself, and you have your own company, and you may be an artist and selling your art, or you're working in the gig economy. You're doing IT work. You're building websites for people. And both of these sectors are exploding in the number of things that you can actually do as far as work goes and export. One of the main provisions of this program is that it all would be technically economic based. So one of the problems we had in earlier versions of this model when we got an EDA grant in 2011 was we had a real hard time in co-working spaces where you were having to tell people, well, you're economic based, so you're good, and you're not economic based, so you can hang out, but you're not part of this special group. So we had to work through some of those issues. But ultimately, what we have is a program with three components: a physical platform where residents of the community can come in through a number of outreach program and marketing efforts, hear about how the program works, what the opportunities are. Mostly that part of the program is used to frighten them away from trying to do this because it's really hard. So what you want after people come through and hear about the program, there's an orientation session, you're left with half to or less than half of the people that showed up remain interested. And from there you go into a preliminary interview process, and you start finding out what their work history is, what their ambitions are, how rooted in the community they are, and you start to understand whether this person's actually a candidate or not. And they either are a candidate for going through a training program which lasts 4 weeks. It's a program developed by Digital Works, who's outside. And these guys really built the business model for this. But it's 4 weeks of training. It's a lot of soft skill training. But 4 weeks of training and evaluation followed immediately by an application process for a couple of weeks where they're actually placed in jobs. They apply and are placed in jobs, coached by the mentors and the proctors. And then they stay in the center and work for a month under the supervision and with the support of the staff, and make sure they get through their probationary period. There's a 90% placement rate. On the front end of this is some screening. We've added some screening. We ask them to take the Work Keys Community Readiness Certificate test series, and there's some other evaluations that allow us to understand whether someone's going to be able to do this kind of work or not. We also ask them on the front end to commit to the program. So we don't want them just taking the training and deciding later they don't want to participate. We explain to them what economic-based jobs are, and that this program is going to be critical to the community. And then they're placed in their job. They work in the job. The jobs are on these W-2s are essentially companies all located out of state, so they're economic based, and the jobs run the gamut from writing and editing to IT work to customer service work. And so one of the big advantages of this kind of program is it isn't like a call center coming to town and everybody that needs a job having to do that particular job. You can hyper customize the work that you're targeting for these people to their aspirations and their abilities. Another part of the program, after they've been working for a while, they're continually assessed at the center, and you are helping them look for move up opportunities. Maybe go apply and go to work for another company after they've worked for 6 months at $11 an hour. You might be able to say get them employed in another company. The Digital Works group has a Train the Trainers program. They can get you up and running in about 6 weeks. There's a 90% placement rate, and you have literally people pulling paychecks in 6 weeks. The problem that the program had in the past was that once the jobs were created, there wasn't any support for them really behind them. They would go home, we'd lose track of them, so you can't measure them. You can't tell whether the jobs you're growing the number of jobs. You really don't have any intel. With no intel on what's actually aggregating in the way of job creation, you don't have a legitimate program. The other modality or type of work in this program are the solopreneurs. So these would be individuals who don't want to work on a W-2 or a 1099 for a company, but want to actually own their own business, be a consultant, sell their artwork, and these people need the kind of incubator services that you would normally want to offer to somebody starting a business, but the incubators, have space, shared space, and shared services. So the incubators make a nice platform if they're willing to tweak their business model a little bit. But we think that solopreneurship programs, the entrepreneurship programs, and this digital work strategy all fit on the same program platform. One of the other weaknesses we saw was, especially in small communities, you run through most of the people that are, ready, willing, and able to do this work pretty fast. Or you can start getting to a point where the cohorts showing up, the teams that you would admit into the training every month, are declining in number and quality. And you eventually get to a point where you're having to deal with people who are hard to employ and chronically poor, and don't have that kind of a work history, stabilized domestic environment, and so they can't really survive in a solo work setting. The other problem, frankly, the biggest reason that people can't stay with it is the isolation. So human beings we're social animals. We need contact with other human beings. And a lack of socialization drives up the stress level. It's also less structure than a lot of people really need. And so in order to keep the attrition rate down, we think you have to have, as part of this ecosystem, you have to have a way to socialize everybody. So even if people go home and work from home, you need to keep them engaged in the group and feeling like they're a member of the group. And so this thing really can't just be a train them, place them, send them home kind of program. It's just not sustainable. We don't think it meets the test of a legitimate job creation strategy. So the consortia players that have been put together, and I'll come back to this slide again, is we have, so here's all if you're going to run this program on scale, so if you're going to do this with SOAR, and you already have some digital works, teleworks centers up and running, so you're way ahead of the game. To make this sustainable and to make it a serious program theater where over time you could see the numbers really mounting, economic-based jobs mounting in a way that actually moves the needle on your economic-based goals, is you have to have a way of keeping these people engaged and so it ends up with a membership platform. So as you join, there needs to be a physical place where they can come to, and you eventually outgrow it and have to have another center. So you have to have those sized. The way we approach this now is we have a team that handles the community's interests like we would a site selection process. So there's a site selection process where the community is interested in this. We would have the community fill out an RFP or make a proposal. The proposal would line out how many jobs do you think you could create. So the way the numbers work is, if half your population is in the workforce, it's probably closer to 40%. And say you had 4,000 people in your workforce, maybe 10% of them, 400, could be made for this solo work business. what part of that 400 could you legitimately get into a center? Maybe 100, 200? We need you to do that assessment first. So how many jobs could you actually create in this solo sector and sustain over time and grow? And then how many of those people would actually work from home all the time? How many would not have, maybe don't have the connectivity or the domestic setting to actually do this work at home, so they would need a place to do it. So you need a co-working center or a call center environment for them, or an office for them. So how many people are going to come into the center and go through the training and become members and do their work from the center? How many are going to go home? And maybe some people elect to go 2 days at home, 3 days in the center. But we think that having this physical facility that's wired up and managed to support these solo workers is crucial, even if they're working from home all the time. You still need them to come in and be part of the community. First of all is a site selection process. Second is you're going to have someone managing this program. So you're going to have a facility, you're going to have furniture, it's going to operate as a business. It could look like a call center. It could look like a co-working space or an incubator. There's a bunch, and I'm going to go through the platforms in a second, potential platforms. But and then the solopreneurs. Somebody comes in and presents with a solopreneurship case. You bring them into the program, and you instead of putting them through the training and the placement, your SBDC or an incubator professional could coach them through their business planning, their startup, and help them manage the startup and launch or management of their solo business. Anytime somebody comes in, matriculates, and operates, you would want to be able to find out how much money they're making. You're not going to publish it, but you need to know that they're gainfully employed, how much money they're making, and when they quit, so that you can tell how many jobs are actually being created. So we think this membership thing is kind of crucial to the whole operation. The socializing and getting people to stay members is kind of the key component that we had to figure out. And we've been working on that in the lab and have been working with a group called Circles USA. And this is a program that started in Iowa and has been, it's a 501c3. I think there are like 43 states. I don't think they're in Kentucky. Has anybody got a Circles program running in their community? So they take 20 hard-to-employ chronically poor adults at any one time, and they put them through a boot camp kind of training for everything that we learned, before we were 25, about how to run a household budget, the hidden rules of the workplace, how to goal set, all these things that a lot of people missed in their early adult life and childhood, and you get them wired in, and out of 20, usually 15 make it through this process to the graduation. Then they're given 2 allies, so two people in the community agree to have their back for 3 years. And so all of the reasons that normally take this person off the rails for when they try to get themselves into the job market or get their life straightened out, all the problems are known by the time they graduate. We know it's a daycare solution is going to break down, or their transportation is going to break down. And so we would get volunteers from the community to have these individuals' backs for 2 or 3 years. So when that event happened that would basically require them to miss work and get fired, we've got their backs. And there's a person in the center who basically is in contact with these people. So they're not calling, if you're an ally, they're not calling you in the middle of the night with a problem. So this back-end support system, the Circles program, is put on the front end for making sure that the people who are wandering into the process say, I want to do this solo work, but I haven't ever done any work before, or I don't know what it's like, and I'm not sure I can do it. They're going to need extra help. And then there's the reporting on the back end. So you're going to have someone actually, managing. Probably in our case, we've got an economic development group that's running the test, and they're going to be keeping all of the data. So we'll have, running data on how many people are actually working, how much they're making, and every time someone moves up in salary or changes, we'll mark all those, and it'll be available to the public.
Mark, knowing that you mentioned that solo workers, all of us are social animals, and when you have to have that human connection, are there any programs like that where you create kind of that online community, so even though they may not physically meet, that they can kind of have almost a chat room or some means to share?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To be honest, we're not sure how all this worked. One of the problems we had, or one of the things we recognized on one of the earlier iterations of this in the 2011 programs were when you have millennials and boomers in the same center, the millennials don't want to be there, mainly because we're tapping them for IT advice all the time. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is they congregate by interest. So the IT guys all seem to kind of huddle in one place, and then they didn't really want to be with the artists and the writers, and so it was. And it was really difficult separating people hunting for somebody to do webmaster work for versus somebody that was actually a legitimate economic-based job client. And so mixing the populations is problematic. The other thing is the list of support amenities that people working alone need, besides the constant contact or the ability to feel like they're part of the group, is they need IT support. Just think about it. A lot of you probably work alone or have tried to or know somebody. It doesn't take long to come up. You need insurance. You need all these things that individuals need, corporations need. So you can almost take the line items that we have for incentivizing a manufacturer or an office project to move to the community. You take each one of those line items for whether we do training and tax incentives and stuff. You could figure out one for these solo workers. And once you form the group, once there's 100 people in your community working in one of these centers, and they're economic based. So the place we're back in grants where I started. That's where this pilot's been. So I went back to grants and said, hey, you guys want to try this? So they're up and running. We're in the second month, and everybody got jobs on the first. We got the first class year. Everybody got jobs. Started the second class, but getting everybody socialized and plugged in. We're using this circles program to socialize the groups in groups of 10 and socialize them, keep them together. So we wanted to show up every once in a while. They have pizza night on Thursdays, but ultimately the art of this thing with someone satisfies that social interaction need. It may work for the millennials, probably doesn't work for the older generations though. We're just gonna have to wait and see. The options for doing this, for putting this thing together, are almost unlimited. It makes it hard to define the program. So it isn't just we can come in and drop it in your community and make it work. It kind of depends on who's there. I think you're in really good shape here because the work ethic's so strong. One of the other issues we're running into is, of course, that the jobs don't pay a lot of times, especially if they're coming in at the beginning and they're getting 10, 12 bucks an hour, they're going to run into the cliff effects. So they won't be able to make enough money to be making more money than they were sitting on the couch making $7 in public assistance. So we've got a calculator that essentially during the interview we download what household they're in and what kind of public assistance they're getting and where these wage cliffs are, so that we don't, after all the training and they've been placed, that a week into it, after they get their first check, they don't bail on you. So there's lots of moving pieces to this. It's going to require further innovation, but it's got so much potential, and I'm going to go through the attributes in a second here. But the target populations are, target populations are there. So the business hosting model. So you can do this through your economic development group. You can do it with a Ascension Small Business Development Center. Again, as the operators. An incubator or an accelerator would work. Co-working centers work. Public libraries are working for this. Community centers, community colleges. So people coming through community college programs, especially the ones that are taking online courses, they're made for this kind of work. And you can put them to work as soon as they get their certificate or they graduate. You can drive up the college's placement rates. Workforce development agencies can do it. That's kind of who's managing the teleworks program here. Retail, residential developers that are building apartment complexes, and they could actually. We've got a couple in Albuquerque that are looking at using this as a way to help boost their sales. And chambers of commerce and trade associations. So there's lots of different ways, probably some that we haven't thought of. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's pretty flexible. Target populations: unemployed, underemployed, students, hard to employ, chronically poor, entry-level people just going into the workforce for the first time, military spouses. These jobs are portable, so if somebody leaves, moves someplace else, they can take the job with them.
I have a question. I know this kind of ties back to circles, but you're talking about your potential target population. You have your hard to employ and chronically poor. How has this worked, or to your knowledge, how has it worked with people who have a substance abuse issue?
Well, it actually works really well in the sense that they aren't in a workplace if they're home. So, they can dress any way they want, and they can be struggling, and they might be not ready for a prime time job in an office building or a retail business where they got to face the public, but they can still work. This works for corrections.
Okay.
You can have a swastika on your forehead, and the person on the phone you're talking to doesn't know. It just
in your coffee spot,
right. So,
Mayor, we're actually working with Addiction Recovery Care, which is a group out of Louisa that does residential treatment centers, and they're working on training, and we partner them with EK7 and they're exploring that as a way to re-enter them in the workforce as they're clean.
Because we have this in this region, we have a lot of that people out of work with, or people who don't work because of substance abuse. And we have the innovation, or we have the besides the innovation, we have the Inspiration Center.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get people back into it. That's why I want to know.
well, the Circles program, we won't take anybody that hasn't been sober for 6 months.
Okay.
And it fits nicely in with the counseling. The other thing is you can incorporate the social services people who are trying to help somebody, stay clean after they've been through rehab. This is the kind of setting where you can bolt their program onto yours, especially if they're not a dominant class of people in your center. But they face the same. Almost anybody doing this solo work is going to face some of the same problems where there's no boss, and there's no pressure to get to work in the morning, unless you have to work in the center. So having the center available also makes it so the program isn't just restricted to those people that have bandwidth to their house. So you don't have to forget this program because you don't have enough bandwidth right now. Most of these jobs will especially the entry level ones, will work on a phone line. So the fact that you're getting bandwidth is terrific. It really helps broaden the potential for the program, but it doesn't really stop anybody. And the experience I talked about where Mrs. Griego was hugging me in the middle of the grocery store, we get 10 of those events every time a class graduates. So every month, you see 10 people going to work. It's like that's a drug in itself when you get to go to these what you need though is you need somebody with a relationship with them, so when they wander away or you don't hear from them. So Paul hasn't shown up. We don't know where he is. He's Navajo. They don't have phones out there. He had an apartment in town. We haven't heard from Paul. So they just go. So somebody in the center needs to go find Paul. Somebody. And so if this is part of your economic development apparatus, and your program the people that are running this program know that this thing has to work, or we can't get into positive net territory on our job creation numbers, then this works. If you're just training them, graduate 7 people, they got jobs or they got offered jobs, great, see you later, congratulations, and you never talk to them again, it's not going to work. We don't think it's going to work. It's better than nothing, but you're not going to be able to walk out into your state and say this is a system solution to economic-based growth. And so you've got to get a sense of how important it's going to be to have the right plan, have the right systems for marketing to people and screening them and testing them and training them and placing them and then coaching them and mentoring them and then up-placing them and then counting them and socializing and counting them. Stu and his group have people who have been 3 years into this, and they've gone from making $10 to 19, 20.
Yeah, I think we got one at 27.
Yeah. So if you can keep them engaged, and you can get them into a mindset where they're actually in this community of interest, in the solo work community, to move up and to build a career. That's one thing. And it's easier to do in rural areas because in the urban areas, there's all this competition for work. So I get kind of tired of working at home. I can go down and get a job at 7-Eleven. In rural areas, there's no jobs for most people going into intro. The economy is contracting, then the service sector is contracting. The workforce agencies are looking at a pool of limited jobs that they can take their clients that come in for income support and do jobs. There's a limited pool of jobs in the community, 20 minutes drive from them that they could possibly do. And they can't place them. They don't have enough to place them. These jobs are all outside the state. They're unlimited. It's an virtually unlimited number of jobs. The spectrum's really wide, so it's actually pretty easy to find somebody who really wants to work. You can find something that they might like to do. Fairly easy. So, yes, sir.
To what extent do you see people going through this program moving into more traditional type jobs?
I don't know because we haven't been running this long enough, but I think the people who are coming into the workforce for the first time, so somebody's hard to employ, chronically poor, as soon as they get the confidence of working, a job on the phone or in the center, they'll be a lot better prepared for tackling a real site-based job. The new entrants to the workforce, so high school kids, college kids that really haven't had a job before, will be able to will be able to sign on, work in the center, or work at home, and they'll be able to put it on the resume that they worked for, IBM. So what DigitalWorks has is a relationship with about 65 employers, where they know what's on the back end of the job. They have a relationship with the employer, and so the people that go through the training apply for the jobs with one or more of these 65 employers, and then batch every month a new batch goes to work for them, and the HR people call Stu and Chris and those guys, and they go, the 10 people you sent us are great. We need 100. Can you get us some more? I'm like, well, no, we don't have enough centers going, but we got 10 more graduating. But so I think that after someone works works for IBM or Convergys or U-Haul for a while, they've got telework experience. It's a real job with a real company. They're getting a W-2, so they've got employment history. So yeah, there's enormous benefit. You could do it part-time. You could have a part-time job and do a solo. I mean, they race through the training and are easy to place. Yes, sir.
For a program like this to be successful, do you need to have somebody on staff that is going out and looking for these jobs? I mean, they're not going to be coming to you, obviously.
So the job placement part of this is what DigitalWorks does. So they have staff that is looking for employers that have mastered how to recruit, train, and manage remote workers that are not, in their offices and checking it. There's a growing number of them, and so one of the biggest obstacles on the marketing end of this thing is almost all these work from home positions are scams. So most of them, 90% of them are scams. And so the biggest hurdle is getting people to come in and go, is this another scam? And so what Stu and his guys have done is they've got 65 companies. They're all real companies. You can check them all out. There's also, they've got a track record, so you want to talk to 2 or 3 people in our program someplace else that's actually been doing this for a year. But there's not enough mass yet. So we don't have enough of these centers going in the country to actually go as a group and say, we can deliver your company's fulfillment needs on new workers. Why don't we work out a deal where you pay us for every person we deliver that actually ends up being a good hire. So there's no income coming from the employers. Yeah. Eventually we'll get to a point where this program could self-fund from the employers wanting to hire the Solo Work Center program enrollees or candidates because they're supported and they have way lower attrition rates. And so this thing has a ways to go. Right now, it takes about $100,000 to stand one up. So by the time you go, have a team pulled together, get the planning done, get a facility set up, hire the proctor and the training and a manager, and have the DigitalWorks folks come in and do the trainer part of this. It's and you get through the first, say, 4 or 5 months, so you have 40 or 50 people actually working. So you have 50 jobs created. So in Grants, New Mexico, they haven't created 25 jobs in 5 years, and we'll have 50 jobs created by the end of March. The all-in cost of this is probably somewhere in the $5,000 per job placed, maybe even lower. If you get into the having to run the heavy circles program on the front, it's probably closer to 5. Otherwise, $3,500. So every class, that's 10 jobs for $35,000. And in New Mexico, we probably spend $30,000 on every manufacturing job or call center job. By the time you look at job training, the IRBs, the Economic Development Incentive Act, high wage jobs tax credit, all that stuff. You calculate that, you're talking about $30,000 a job. This is a tenth of it. A little more than a tenth. And we are trying to set this up so it's all post-performance. So you only, the city or the state or whoever's funding this program, whoever's paying the $3,500, is only pays after the job's created. So after this $100,000 is invested to get the program up and running, you need a steady $3,500 per person. So right now, the community colleges and the workforce boards are getting $8 per client, and they're not even guaranteeing anybody gets a job. So one of the flaws we thought that this program had so far was that it was being sold to the workforce boards and not the economic development community. So this is a job creation program. It's not a training program. It's not an education program. It has elements of it. But this is we find you economic-based jobs, and we grow the economic-based jobs in the community by volition and at a predictable rate. And so we're in the process right now of trying to figure out how to amend the eligibility for some of these job creation programs on the books so they can fund this program, post-performance. So everybody knows what that means. So there's no give us some money and we promise to create some jobs. And it's pretty safe on the first 5 months, 10 people per job, you'll get 50 jobs out of it. The real question is, in 2 years, if you don't have the ecosystem behind it, it looks like a call center that came to mind, and you're out of business. You won't be able to sustain. So,
Okay, some of the futurists talk about, because of artificial intelligence, the ability to ascertain the buying habits of people, that one of the top jobs that's going to be eliminated are call center types of jobs. So as we're looking to teleworks and creating these types of jobs, where does that fit to where we can protect and help these workers?
yeah, and I think that's a really good question, and it's bound to happen. It's already happening. But this isn't call center work, per se. I mean, some of it is. This is any work that could be produced by anyone, as long as you can teleport the results of your work to someone outside the community that will pay for it. So, yes, but that's going to happen anyway, and there's always going to be somebody needing. Somebody needing. The question is, can you get this work done cheaply, and can the community support a group of people that are doing this? The turnover. So if you didn't have Digital Works ready to replace somebody that lost their job, so the second they lose their job, they're back in the center, and their people are looking over their shoulder, helping them apply for something even better. So. That's another part of the program. That's the retention and expansion piece. That was the next question.
Yeah, and also, I mean, is it possible to look at? You're right, and there's companies. For example, we thought we had one that was, they're writing insurance, client, policies. You think, well, you got to have a human for that. Well, no, not anymore. An algorithm does that, and that's caused a downside in one industry. But can you translate it from picking up the phone and calling and monitoring a dashboard of online chats for a company, or is that part of what some of the jobs Teleworks is filling already?
The biggest listing, number of postings, number of openings, whatever you want to call them, and what work at home work right now is search engine optimization. So it's somebody that looks at websites and captures the volume, basically analyzing big data
Yeah.
to create the predictive artificial intelligence. And then after that, cybersecurity. And I don't see those two going away for a while. But
5 companies they had to apply with for. They practice the application process, so when they actually hit it, because a lot of these companies are measuring your keystroke speeds and stuff as soon as you apply. So you get them ready. They apply well. They test, and they usually have to go through some tests. They test well, and then they're supported. So your people, the people that are in your Solo Work Center, are going to have a leg up on everybody else trying to work alone for a couple of reasons. One, they're better trained, they're supported, and the support system on the back end means they're socialized, and it means they're going to be more valuable to they're going to be more productive, they're going to have a lower chance of washing out. That makes your community, it's like any other kind of strategic advantage that you had chasing employers. It's just your people will have a strategic advantage over everybody else in the market trying to work from home. And once there's a way to brand the people in your community when they apply to the company, you have something really special going. We don't know how you do this without a program like this. So I had a list of 20 attributes of this thing that we've covered most of it. But I think we could just any more questions or this is a pretty messy. It's so new and it's got so many moving pieces. It's hard for people to get their heads around it the first time they hear it. And that's one of the things we think this RFP process on the front end requires whoever wants to do this. Anybody just can't come in and do this. You've got to. We won't just come in and work with any community. You have to want us. You have to show us that you have all the resources lined up, and that you have you have a way to govern this thing, a way to fund it. You scaled it, and that it's a major part of your economic base recovery strategy or maintenance strategy. That this is something your community is really going to focus on. Just like if we were the site selectors or the CEOs of an employer, we want to know that the community we're going into to invest all this time and effort really means it. They want to do it, and they're prepared to do it. So the front end part of the process is designed to elicit that kind of expression from the community, and it explains everything you would have to do and how you would size it.
It seems to me it ties back into what Tracy was saying, where if you're running an entrepreneur center, you need a champion, you need someone who cares about that center and the people who work there. It seems like what you're laying out here, that you need a champion in the community, and you listed before, I forget what all they were, the different institutions that can, where you might put this kind of, someone has to umbrella it, right? Whether it's these. So whether you have a co-working center, you have a community college, and you probably know here in Pikeville and other places, where you've already done that sort of thing. But you need someone at one of those places that says, yeah, this is a key part of our community strategy, and we want to run it here.
Right.
Because you do need that location.
So your observation that this is like incubators, where and if you guys have been party to any projects that were incubators or accelerators, they're either great or they're awful. They aren't in between, and it all depends on who's running it. Who did you hire? And they're either great or they're failures based on who you hire. This is even worse. I mean, this thing we're talking about is way more complicated than just helping somebody, through their business planning and get them through a couple of rounds of financing so you can kick them out. This is running a country club / you're going to need a den mother, somebody that can be really strong and nurturing at the same time. It's just mind-boggling what all the kind of attributes were, and it was really hard to find somebody in grants that could do this job. I mean, we didn't have 3 candidates. We ran through 15, and teachers don't do it. The classroom teachers don't do this. They're almost, we can almost rule them out. This is a very collaborative, very nurturing kind of job where you have to stay in contact with these people. They have to like you and respect you, and you've got to earn it in the first week of training. Second week of training, you late, you're out. They lock the door at 8 o'clock. And you get one more chance. You can get in the next month, maybe, if there's a spot. But, you know, it's tough love all the way along, and this has to be, that's why, I think the most important thing we learned was this has to be a job creation program. Not a training program, not a workforce. Workforce boards get paid for somebody being offered a job. Or community colleges get paid for people going through training. This is if it's going to be a job creation program, it has to be a job creation program. It has to be paid as a job creation program. So it's mission driven, not compliance driven. I'm not giving you $8,000 or $3,500 to do some training and check it off when you got the training done. Goodbye. You're building a community of people.
Some of our K-12 schools are exploring the wraparound services. They've got broadband, and students could potentially do telework as part of the school hours, or after hours, or adults. Is there any way that K-12 students can qualify for any of these jobs?
Well, I think, most of our high schools in the U.S., by the kids that are achieving, are done with all their core classwork by their senior year, and you're basically running subsidized dating their senior year. So So probably a good question for Stu, but we've been Grants High School is looking at taking their seniors and having them actually get these jobs. So that, and colleges are probably the best places to go, and universities even. So if you had a great business school, and you wanted to, if you could get your seniors or your MBAs through parts of the Series 7 licensing process, and you could sell those people to Fidelity Investment, and they could work their junior senior year part-time or full-time in the summer online from the center if it was located close to campus. And you just jack up their placement rates, their graduation placement rates. So this goes a lot of different directions, and part-time, full-time. But this is the most promising thing we've seen in 10 years as far as restoring some of the capacity, especially rural areas, to create economic-based jobs. Good.
Good. All right, let's hear it. Thank you very much. That Mark here. We're going to go on and get started with our last presentation this afternoon. I think it's important to be here for this one because it's going to all fold into what we're doing tomorrow. And we're excited about having Michael Curry here. Had a chance to talk to Michael really back, I guess, in the spring, as Kevin's going to get him all set up here. Michael comes to us. He founded Strategic Network Group, and you've got his bio is in your package. He did that back in 1998. But I think more than anything, he's led his team through a very experienced specialist that he had within his team. He's been able to lead them in a wide range of just economic development initiatives, just how to get the most out of your broadband investments. So to wind us up today, join me in welcoming here to Pikeville, Mr. Michael Curry. Michael, welcome.
Thanks very much for that.